Brox. Welcome to today's masterclass. It's been really interesting to watch all our members and how they've been dealing with through this challenging times, like embracing new delivery methods, becoming creative with what they're offering, and also integrating new technologies, which is about what we're going to have a look at today. So I'm so excited that this masterclass is around chatbots, which I haven't had anything to do with myself personally, but you know, how we can use them to evaluate training and also support behaviour change. So I've heard a lot about Emma, and we've sort of met at a few different conferences, so I'm really looking forward to hearing more. Also, I'd like to invite everybody to hang around at the end. We've just asked Deb Key, who's the one of our members, but also Head of Learning and Development with 40 Winks Franchising, who's actually set up a bit of work with what Emma's been doing. So I've just put her on the spot and asked her if she wouldn't mind sharing a couple of stories with us. So she's kindly agreed to do that. So just before I hand over to Deb to do the intro for Emma, just because Emma is going to be using some slides, it's probably best to view on speaker mode. So does everybody know how to do that in your gallery? Nods up, yep. All right, wonderful. All right, well, I'm now going to hand over to Deb, if you wouldn't mind introducing Emma. Thanks, everybody.
So welcome everybody this afternoon. I hope it's as glorious a day where you guys are as what it is here in Melbourne. We've got a lovely 24, so we're actually enjoying the sunshine today. I would love to introduce my friend Emma Weber. In fact, I haven't said that properly, have I, Emma?
That's quite okay. You know, I'm quite laid back about this. Emma Weber.
Weber. Emma is an absolute authority on learning transfer. I literally fell across her material, I don't know how many years ago now. It was when her book was first coming out, and there was a big hoo-ha around it. And I downloaded her free chapter, which everybody can jump on her website and download her free chapter, and read it and went, oh my God, this woman absolutely knows what learning is all about. And the fact that she's concentrating on the back end, you know, the front end's really important and the delivery is really important, but it's actually the back end that makes the difference between success and failure. So I sort of started following her and listening to all of her talks, and whatever she did, I was sitting in the background. She probably didn't know I was stalking her like that. But she's absolutely made it her mission to, you know, go on this worldwide journey of, you know, making sure people understand learning transfer and its importance. During that journey, she's actually almost fallen across this chatbot functionality, and she's brought that to life in so many ways. So I'm really keen to listen to where she's up to right now, because we haven't had an in-depth conversation for a couple of months. But you know what Emma's currently doing and the methodology she uses with learning transfer, it's global now. It's, you know, she's not just somebody sitting in Sydney and working with a couple of clients. She's working worldwide, and the chatbot, I know, has been translated into, I don't know how many, is it 12 or 13 different languages?
The team is in 12 languages. The chatbot is in 2 languages, 6 countries. So we are getting there.
There we go. So sit back, hang on. You're going to learn lots from this lovely lady, and here she is, Emma.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Debbie and Hope, joining us there for the introduction. That's absolutely gorgeous. Just delighted to be here today. Whenever I get involved with the ILP, or ILP as I used to know it, I just really feel as if I'm with my peers. So I really hope today will just be, you know, a collaborative learning journey and a learning experience. Really looking forward to sharing with you all. It's an absolute delight to see some people I know on the line. So Karen, who I think is here, used to actually be part of my team. So Karen, lovely to have you here today, and learning now where we're at with the chatbot. And Con has been just a tremendous support over the years, and kind of connecting in and keeping me in the loop onto things. So thank you, Con. And also to faces that maybe I haven't met before, just really lovely to be here. And I really hope I can share some value with you today. I'm going to just, we'll go to a bit of a deck just to get us moving here. As Deb said, I am based in Sydney, and wherever I'm presenting, even if I'm presenting locally, I love to start with a good old shot of the Opera House just to remind myself of our ambience today. but just to say, as Deb said, really the work has now taken on a life of its own, and partly through to the books that I've created. So 2014 was first book, Turning Learning into Action. The second was Making Change Work a few years later, and that was co-written with Jack and Patty Phillips from the ROI Institute. And the third book I've got up here is ROI Basics. Now, most of you will know I have not written ROI Basics. That is written by Jack and Patty Phillips from the ROI Institute. But interestingly enough, they've actually got a section in this which has been republished recently on chatbots and data analytics. So I really think that people are getting the link between learning, transfer, and evaluation. And we're going to be talking about both today. Before we jump in, one of the things that I would really love if we could do today is just share in the chat box. Now, I know everyone, it was funny, I was talking to someone earlier on today and we were saying we were doing Zoom before everyone was doing Zoom. And now we're all doing Zoom. I know that you'll be familiar with the chat box. And I'd really love us to kind of use the chat box today as a way to talk to each other, share ideas. With a group, we can go on and off mic if we want to chat to certain people, but I would love us to get into the chat box for our chatbot discussion. Try saying that quickly. So the quiz to start us off. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Meg, getting right onto it. I want to have a little bit of a quiz about technology. So let's get ourselves all thinking, and answers in the chat box, please. When do you think the iPod came out? We're going to go across all of these, so we're going to move quite quickly, but just your gut feel. Thanks, Berenice. 2003. Michelle, 2008. 1990s, Anne. 2000, 1990s. Okay, we've got a few different answers there. A long time ago. Yes, we're feeling our ages as we're looking at that. And what about the iPhone? Can anyone remember when the iPhone came out? iPhone. So we've got 2005, 2008. Yeah, so we're tracking along. So 12 years ago, Karen may be thinking maybe 15. And what about the iPad? You might want to jot these down for yourself. If you're competitive and you kind of want to give yourselves a score out of 10, you're very welcome. iPad, Con, you're sort of thinking around 2000, and Berenice 2012. So there's some big gaps as we're not sure how long the iPad's been around with us. Bill, 2000 from you. Thank you. Yeah, it's a tricky one, that the iPad piece. And what about your iWatch with your wearables? Is anyone using an iWatch, and when do you think that came onto the market? Karen, 5 years ago, 2015. So we're kind of a bit more consistent on that. Now it's kind of coming into memory. And what about things like your Amazon Alexa, your smartphone speaker, or your Google Home that you may have at home? Does anyone know when they started coming in? Yeah, a couple of years ago. So it's interesting, isn't it, to think back in a relatively short space of time. I mean, I don't know about anyone else. I can still remember the Walkman. And we're here just talking about a very small part of time with what's happened with the iPod. Now, there's two other big trends. I'm asking these as a question, but guys, the chances of anyone knowing the answer is slim, I think. But if you feel you know how many people were online globally as of the year 2000, you're welcome to contribute. Michelle, thank you. Yes, the transistor radio, perfect. And we're also going to be looking at now how many people are online globally in 2020. And I'm sharing this with you because the landscape has really changed in such a short period of time. And I think we instinctively know it, but it's really worth revisiting. So the iPod was actually 2001. So we had a couple of people year 2000, but also some people thinking it was a little bit later than that. So 2001 for the iPod. iPhone. Conrad, are you doing a bit of Googling there? You may be. No. You're just instinctively brilliant. I love it. iPhone 2007. And I think that is etched a little bit more in our memories now, and going back in our chat, I'm sure we'll see people were a little bit more accurate with the iPhone, which is great. Now, iPad was one that people struggled with here. 2010 with the iPad. So if we kind of think, we went iPod, iPhone, iPad, the iWatch, 2015. So it took quite a long while to go from those flat devices to the iWatch. And here's an interesting one. The Amazon Alexa was actually 2014. But if we think about when in 2019, there were over 100 million Alexa devices had been sold. So I think we really saw that exponential piece of the Alexas coming in. So we can see how much technology has shifted to the point where people are talking to their devices at home in a relatively short space of time there. We're talking a 20-year span. And let's just have a look at what this means. Now sorry, I've got my chat box up here, so I've actually just lost some of my own slides. Don't you love that? I think from memory, the slide should be saying that Microsoft has 95% global market share back in the year 2000. Now it's got 1% of the global market share. Does anyone want to hazard a guess as to why that is? And you feel free to put that in the chat box if you have an idea. I know as soon as someone said to me, I thought that's, Karen, they're annoying. I thought that's so obvious. It's because we've switched to mobile devices. And so if you think about Microsoft is so well known for your desktop devices, but now we have so many people actually online with your mobile devices and different types of tablets, etc. Your Microsoft market share has actually gone down. Yeah, exactly, Anne, exactly. So here's the other interesting stat. Just having a few keyboard issues here. Oh, let's try this one. Excellent. So back in the year 2000, 413 million people online globally, million. 20 years ago, now, Con, you're so close. Well, as of 2019, 4.4 billion. Hey, Con, maybe I should update the figures, and that 6.5 billion is in fact 2020. I'll do some fact checking later. But isn't that fascinating when we've gone from the million to the billion? And it's because things have gone mobile. And so the reason I sort of start with this is really, really big picture, is that whatever we're doing in learning, we're doing it in the context of this shift. Now, I started my business 18 years ago now when I moved from the UK over to the beautiful Sydney to build a business, knowing 3 people in the country. Absolutely crazy. But clearly we're still in business because we're sharing with you today. And so really that, 18-year journey, this is the whole journey of this huge explosion. And so part of the reason we got into chatbots is we were being challenged to put more technology into our process and the way that we were working. And so we started an exploration in terms of what type of technology do we want? And most of the technologies that I started exploring in the space of learning transfer, which essentially is the application phase of learning, and I'm going to go on to explain more about that just to dig in. But most of the technologies were trying to remind people into behavioral change and nag people into behavioral change. And that goes against everything I believe in about people and how people function and how people change. So we really had to find another alternative. There's more about the journey on the way, but basically the alternative which we came across was a chatbot tool. Now, some people call them chats, some people call them bots, some people call them chatbots. We prefer to call them a conversational experience. But basically, it's a piece of software that mimics a conversation. And note, I don't say it sort of mimics a human. We like to be transparent. And I think it's all for the best that you don't try and pretend you're not a chatbot when you are. But essentially, it's a piece of software that can have a conversation with you. So I just want to check in. What type of chatbots have people been using, either in learning if you actually, let's just have a, I don't know if we can have a show of hands, or whether we want to put in the chatbot. Has anyone actually been using chatbots in learning so far? Debbie, we know, you and I are across it, but anyone else using chatbots in learning, just so we can kind of get a sense? I'm not, okay, so most people not. Okay, so let's pause the thought about learning. Who'd like to share in the chat box, and we may kind of come off mics for a little bit of this as well, of where they've used a chatbot in their personal life? Anyone wanting to share where they have, yeah, service desk for you, Meg, customer service, no service, help desks, yeah. So the most common type of chatbot now is for customer service. So the ATO has a chatbot. If anyone has been chatting to the lovely ATO recently, you can get chatting to their chatbot. And most chatbots are designed to help people answer a question in an easier, more efficient way. Deb, I can see you're busy with Hope there. Deb, do you just want to talk a little bit about Cortana and perhaps just come off mute for a second?
Yeah, so Cortana is Microsoft, and if you want help with your computer, if you want to know where something is or even how to do something, you can simply speak to Cortana and she'll tell you the answer. She'll
okay,
go,
great.
have a look in this file or wherever it needs to be. Yeah.
Yeah. And does anyone remember the forerunner, the little paperclip that used to pop up in Microsoft? So that was kind of almost the forerunner to Cortana, wasn't it?
Yeah,
and so, yeah, perfect. And so, yeah, Clippy. there's most people are familiar with chatbots when they go to have it answer a question. And you can see down the left-hand side of the screen here, you've got those on a public website. You've also got chatbots where you're already logged into a customer portal. And when you're on a portal, often the chatbot will know more about you. So it may know, how many frequent flyer points you've got, or your frequent flyer status, or something like that. So it can make your conversation more tailored to who you are. But what we're really looking at today, and Michelle, great that you remember Eliza when that came out. I think that was, I should do my research on dates. I'm not even going to guess at that, but I think it might have been the 1970s. Anyway, we'll come back. We'll have that as a task for me to go away and find out. But yeah, that was one of the very, very early stages of chatbots, rules-based chatbots. Now, as technology has changed and data capability has changed, we can actually have now conversational intelligence tools. So on the left-hand side here, the chatbot is really used to answer your question and solve a problem that you have. A conversational intelligence tool is actually designed to have a conversation with someone, and we have people talking to Coach M for 20 to 30 minutes at a time. So I also just here want to draw our attention to things like digital assistants. Now, does anyone, 66 for Eliza, there we have it. Chatbots, who said they were new? Bringing us up to date. With digital assistants, again, just wondering, do many people have a digital assistant at home, either an Alexa or a Google Home? I was chatting with someone the other day and they said they must get out of the habit of saying good night to their Google Assist. And the person said, as long as you're also saying good night to your wife, you're okay with that. The thing with a digital assistant, people feel that they're kind of building the relationship with them, but often it's usually just 1 or 2 exchanges and it resets. So you might ask your Google Assist to tell you the weather for the day, and then you ask it to switch on the radio. But the weather and the radio are not related. They're just completely different exchanges. And so that's why it's a digital assistant rather than being a conversation. So you're not actually having a conversation that's related with it, you're just giving it instructions. So I want to be really clear. One of the common uses of chatbots, certainly within HR, that I'm seeing a real increase in is chatbots for answering common HR queries that can really then cut down the amount of time required within HR just dealing with things like, leave forms and work health safety, you know, kind of general HR stuff. So that's kind of an area of explosion that I'm seeing with chatbots within kind of the HR function. Within learning, there are some chatbots that you can use to help you navigate as some kind of LMSs. So we've got kind of the auto flow that can be used there. But the type that we're going to be talking about today is specifically a kind of a conversational intelligence tool that's more of a coaching chatbot. So this is not about helping you navigate content. It's actually about helping create behavioral change. And the reason we've kind of got a, guys, you have to excuse me, I'm just having real problems. Here we go. With my mouse, but all is well. So this is what a chatbot conversation looks like. It actually looks like any other text message conversation with people on a phone. And you can have a chatbot conversation within something like Microsoft Teams, Slack. WhatsApp is a little bit more problematic because they're very restrictive about the number of chatbot developers that they allow on their platform. But certainly we use a lot of SMS text message because it's just super easy as a way to deliver the service. But essentially, when you look at it, it looks like any other message that you might have going back and forth, either on your WhatsApp or your text message. So I just kind of wanted to give you that visual of to know what you're looking at. But remembering it's actually a computer program in the background that's having that conversation. Has anyone, does this throw up any immediate questions that anyone wants as to what a chatbot is? Bill, I know when we were chatting the other day, you said to me, Emma, are you going to make it crystal clear what a chatbot is? Is it crystal clear now, Bill?
It's getting there. It's getting there. I'm thinking that these reminders that I'm getting for doctor appointments and all those kind of things must be a chatbot.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And there's a real distinction between automation and AI, and it's a bit of a flip as to whether something is just automated or has it got artificial intelligence with it.
Yes.
And partly in my mind, I think, does it really matter whether it's automated or artificial intelligence, as long as it's doing the job that you need it to?
Yeah, good. I'll be able to watch for them now, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So,
great.
Emma, can we distinguish between a bite-sized learning piece and a chatbot, whereas a bite-sized learning piece can be pushed out depending on a query you might ask, and what's a chatbot is more conversational, is that correct?
So if we go back to this, Con, a bite-sized learning piece that is sent out via a chatbot is using the chatbot as a method of delivery, yeah? But it's not a conversational intelligence tool. And that's kind of now why we're sort of more calling the work that we do that it's a conversational intelligence tool than a chatbot, because a chatbot is so generic and it can be used in so many different ways. So you could use a chatbot to actually send out a training program. And oh gosh, I forget the name of the guy. I think it's Artis or begins with A. There's a guy in America who's been doing quite a lot of sending out training by text messages. And he's been doing a lot in third world countries because they actually then have access to it where they wouldn't necessarily have access to an LMS or something like that, but they all have a phone device. But it's not actually designed necessarily to create a conversation. It's just designed as a way of delivering information. Whereas what we're talking about now is conversational intelligence. Does that answer that, clear that up? Yeah, thanks, Con. It's good question because yeah, there's so many different types of chatbot. So I was starting to say why we've been focusing on a coaching chatbot for behavioral change, because as Deb said, I really have made it my life's mission to solve this problem of scrap learning. Why I thought I could take the whole world's issue of scrap learning, I do not know. And we're making a dent in it. And I think one of the things is with scrap learning. So scrap learning is when someone goes on a training program and only implements a small part of what they have learned. And instinctively as learning professionals and participants, we know that that's happened. I think we kind of conveniently forget and choose to ignore it. Partly because I don't think anyone really cares about scrap learning until we think of really the cost of what it's costing us. And it's almost so ubiquitous that we just kind of let it happen. So part of my remit is to say, look, let's make sure we get every ounce of value out of that learning that we can, and we really have people applying their learning. And so the frame that we talk about in this is that we need to shift our thinking from what is the input to the learning and what is the output of the learning. And most of the time in learning, we spend our time thinking about things in the input column that's kind of on the left-hand side of the screen here. But really, if we put as much effort in thinking of the output, we're really going to be starting to add much more value to our organizations, speak the language of our organizations, and being able to demonstrate the value of learning more. And Con, I know you've had conversations about performance support rather than the learning input. For me, learning transfer and our turning learning into action methodology actually bridges the gap between inputs and outputs. The turning learning into action methodology itself isn't an output, but it's a tool to take an input into an output. And I was chatting with the wonderful Trish Yule, who's a very dear friend of mine. If you don't know Trish's work, do look it up. We're going to be sharing some of it later on. Ultimately, it's not just the output you want, it's the outcome. What's the outcome of the learning? So we're kind of shifting it along the whole time. But I really encourage you just to think of that frame of reference as we go through. And I'm going to start moving quickly. I apologize. I can talk for a long time on this because I get so excited about it. All these years in, it still feels very important conversation to be having. And one of the tricky things is we can kind of fall over ourselves with the language. And some people call it sustaining, some people call it embedding, some people call it, the reflection. And then also you've then got your measurement words layered in of evaluation and impact. And really what we're talking about is the behavioral change part of learning. And to think about behavioral change and not just reminding someone or ensuring that they can remember what they've learned. So there's a very, maybe not so much this year, but certainly last year, everyone was talking about Ebbinghaus's forgetting curve and how they wanted to make their focus that everyone could remember what they've learned. I don't know about you, but there's a whole heap of things I remember, but I never put into action anyway, even though I know it would be best practice in my life, because it's far more complicated than knowing about something than whether you actually do something. So there's a distinction that I create between creating impact from your learning environments and measuring the impact from your learning. Okay. And a lot of the time when people are thinking about even the work we do at Lever, they think it's all about the measuring, but we have to put processes in place that actually help people create the impact and not just measure it. The two go hand in hand, but they're kind of different. So we just need to be across that as well. So please do, if there's questions coming up as we're going through this, and I know it's hard to, I mean, I'm happy if people jump off mute and shout out a question, feel free. But if you'd be more comfortable putting it in the chat box, do go ahead. So how did we create a chatbot? Luckily for us, we had the core methodology of turning learning into action. And as a team internationally, we'd had over 20,000 one-on-one conversations. And so we could take all that information that we had had over 15 years, which essentially was a training data set of 8,000 people, and use that to create our conversational pathways within Coach M. And that's essentially the groundwork that we had moving that forward. And just to share, partly I said we were looking at different technologies and had come across this chatbot technology. Karen, you will probably remember this from being on the team, but do you remember that I'm always saying to the team, remember when you're talking with a participant, after a training program. So this is at the action stage where you're implementing the learning. It's not about the participant having a conversation with you. It's about you helping the participant have a conversation with themselves. I don't know how many times I say that in a month, perhaps even in a week, someone could tell me. But the key thing is, someone then said to me, well, if that's true, why can't we do it with artificial intelligence? And of course, I said, no, never, not in my lifetime, practically over my dead body. And does anyone else know, you know, when you're a leader and you've suddenly gone into that, no, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to consider it. I don't want it to be. Like, anyone knows me would think I am the most unlikely person to be using an AI chatbot to coach people that is so close to my heart. Like, you know, I live and breathe for coaching, and yet have put in a technology to do it instead. And the reason that I've done it is because it works so well against all my better assumptions and thoughts at the very beginning of this process. So our methodology we've just looked at there. So when I talk about my team, for those that aren't familiar with our work, we have a team of professionals around the world who will have real life phone conversations with people after they've been on a training program. We call them an action conversation. So the preparation is when someone creates an action plan at the end of their learning intervention. That action plan then comes to us, and my team work with people on their action plan, ensuring that it's embedded into behavioral change. It's as simple as that. Although the methodology isn't, it's a simple methodology, not always an easy methodology, which is why we always keep learning. But I just want to check in with the chat box again. Who's using action plans currently within their learning? Who has action plans as part of their learning interventions that they're doing either within their organization or with their clients? Does anyone just want to share that? Oh, Karen, is that true? You've never seen an action plan used anywhere else? Huh. Does anyone else use action plans? No.
Oh, Emma, Meg here.
Yeah. Thank you, Meg. Shout out. Please feel free.
Sorry, I'll take myself off video, my video off. Yes, I do use action plans, maybe even like a bit of a SWOT analysis pre-program, in terms of, you know, personal strengths and weaknesses at this point in time and what you'd like to be doing more effectively. And then post-learning, stop, start, continue doing, what are your action plans going to be around that? Yes? Is that?
Yeah, that is what I mean. Yeah, the stop, start, continue is kind of quite a common format, I think, Meg, for people to do it. And it sounds as if you're doing that as well. So you get people to note the one thing they'll do as a result of the training. Yep. Okay. So there seems to be some basic ones that are coming through. And I think there's been a bit of a trend away from action plans. And I think the reason for that is so often they just go nowhere, and people feel they're doing an action plan, but it just doesn't add any value. So like, even as facilitators, I know people have got bored of action plans because they just know it's a bit of a waste of time of doing the action plans. But if we think about it with an action plan, what we're doing is we're priming that person to say, this is what I am going to do moving forward. It's actually getting them to make a decision. I can do a whole conversation about action plans because they're so critical. But essentially, the action plan bridges the gap between the learning and the learning transfer being the behavioral change part of learning. And Anne, you're absolutely right there. It's really frustrating when we know that the intention is that people sit down with their manager, have those conversations, but they rarely happen. And so this is where Coach M comes in. And basically Coach M, which is our chatbot, can have a conversation with the participant about their action plan so that they are followed up on the action plan and held accountable to keeping moving forward with that plan, and the plan stays alive. So this is an example of how chatbots can be used to really help that kind of coaching, reflection, accountability piece. And you can see here, the woman that's actually sat with the, you know, having the chat with Coach M on her mobile phone. So we're going to kind of delve in just a little bit about the different types of environment. So you really have you'll have your learning environment. When you're reflecting on your action plan, you actually take it into your internal environment, and you can start to own that and integrate it with your own internal neural pathways. We'll go on to that in a second. And then you implement it back in your work environment. So we really move through these different environments using the tool over a period of time. And it also takes us through the different stages of learning, of the education, integration, and implementation. Now, I think there's going to be some people on the call that actually have quite a lot of knowledge around neuroscience. Do we have any neuroscience specialists on the tool? On the team, on the call, sorry. Meg, actually, that's a good point. Action plans can get overlooked or fail to be used. Yeah, Meg, I kind of glossed over it a little bit, but you see on the action planning slide that I had earlier, at the bottom there, that's a link to Turning Learning into Action website. That's a free online action planning tool. It's not a chatbot. I want to be really clear because I don't want people to be disappointed, but it's a really good free action planning tool. It's part of our gift to the world. And at the end of it, you can just put in a, Debbie, have you used it before with your people? Yep. People are using it all over the world.
Yeah, I've used it with my people in the past. And what I do now, though, is I get them to come up with a project that they're going to do and commit to that utilises the training as they step back into their real life. And part of that is completing that action plan still, or a similar version of it. Yeah.
But one of the things I love about the tool is at the end, they can put their email address of a colleague in, they can put the email address of their manager, and it's just automated. It just sends it out. So that's a free tool, turninglearningintoaction.com. And also, Meg, if you're facilitating and you get them to send you a copy of the action plan, so you're one of the person that's put into that, you would also then have the visibility, even if people are working remotely, of are those action plans being created and are they decent action plans? So feel free to explore that. One of the things around Coach M for us is about thinking, well, why does it work? You know, we've been amazed at the success it's having, but why is it? And partly the neuroscience tells us three things. The brain likes to stay the same, but it can change, but we have to put effort into it. And this is this balance between the homeostasis and the neuroplasticity. So that's at a very base level. The second thing that we now know about the brain is that it feels psychological pain in the same way it feels real pain. And there's some really interesting studies been done in the US that Army veterans who've got PTSD get better results from working with a chatbot therapist than they do from a real therapist, especially at the early stages of their PTSD. How amazing is that? And the reason is because of the high level of psychological safety that they feel with the chatbot rather than even talking to a person. And Deb, we'll share that we were doing some work together and then you moved companies. So you missed the exciting part.
Yes.
But one of the participants at Deb's old company, we've got a little show reel, and he shared that he definitely shared more with Coach M than he would have done ever with a person. And that just absolutely floored me because I know how wonderful our human team is to talk to, but it's the psychological safety. The third thing we know about neuroscience is, you know, the way our brain chemicals actually create the conditions for learning and can take us into this habit part of the brain, the basal ganglia, and that we need to get people slowing down, reflecting, connecting to their purpose, connecting why it's important to them, and kind of getting them in that sort of different reflective space to get those chemicals and neurons firing. So that is a very kind of top level glance at what some of the neuroscience is telling us, the other interesting area of science that is behavioral psychology. And if anyone wants it, you're welcome to just let me know. I can send you a really interesting research report around self-regulated learning. And there's been lots of studies done around self-regulated learning now. And it's to say, yes, we need the task conditions for learning, which is, you know, your social context, what's happening in the social context, the time, the resources, etc. But also really important is that we have these cognitive conditions in place where we're helping people understand how it relates to their beliefs, how it relates to their motivations, their maps of the world in their minds. And I always say it's your thoughts, feelings, values, beliefs, fears, and needs that control your behaviors. So we need to be thinking about changing behaviors at that level through a reflective conversation, rather than just thinking solely about what's happening in our task conditions. Thanks, Anne, will do. You can send me your email address. We'll sort that out. Task conditions, as we often do, is that which is more that input phase of learning. So that's just a touch on the science. But to give you an idea of how the flow of the chatbot works is, you know, this is just an example. You have some kind of pre-work, maybe your phase 1, then you've got some kind of learning intervention, and then we capture the action plan. And then Coach M actually has 3 conversations, as an example, with someone over an 8 to 10 week period when they're changing their behaviors. Now you'll see here that it's labeled a learning break. And a learning break is when you grab your mobile phone, you grab a coffee, and you go and you sit and you have a chat with Coach M. Much the same as you might go and sit and have a chat on the phone with a real coach. And, you know, we have little animations that sort of set up the process so people understand what's going to happen within a learning break. But essentially what we're doing is we're getting someone away from their desk, we're getting them slowing down, and we're getting them sat having a chat with the conversational intelligence. So it's complicated to do a demo across a large group. So we're just going to have a real teeny snapshot of what it's like to be overlooking Hugh's shoulder while he's having a learning break. So we're making the assumption that Hugh has already done his action plan. He's already had a couple of weeks to start practicing his bringing into place what he's put in his plan. And he's already had an intro part of a conversation to Coach M that sort of sets the scene. So we're going to dive in here sort of midway through the conversation. And now this is Coach M typing. Coach M doesn't actually type. I hate to tell everyone, but it's all, this is for show, this bit. It pops up. Hugh replies. So just take a moment to read that. I'll be quiet while you have a look. Okay, so that is a very small snippet of a conversation that Coach M might have with someone. The interesting thing is that really it is all about helping that individual have the conversation in their head. Now, this was a real participant. We got their permission to actually share what it was they actually said when they were having the reflections. And often people do share, you know, 1 or 2 sentences about what's happening for them. And as you read them through, certainly in the early days of Coach M, I'd get quite emotional at the levels of reflection that people were having just using this tool to help them get into it. Now, you might look at this and say, oh, is that exactly right? You know, he said he was getting stressed and we've got an answer. Well, that sounds good. What's really fascinating is that it appears that when you actually get someone inside their head, slowing down and reflecting, they're just kind of in the process and in the moment, and they're sort of rolling with what Coach M says to them. And sometimes Coach M will get things that are, 100% sort of spot on. We're doing quite a lot of now checking in of what someone has said to kind of check the understanding before we take them down a path. We have paths for if someone says, I don't know. Karen, again, you might remember we have 14 different ways in our methodology to get someone past I don't know. I decided I would stop at 8 when I was programming them into the chatbot, because for heaven's sake, whoever uses 14 different ways to get someone over an objection in a conversation. But we have pathways for not sure, pathways if people feel they haven't got time to follow through on something. So there's certain things that people will go down different paths. And a lot of the time, it's actually the individual driving the conversation in their head. Now we're going to go on to talk about the measurement piece, and also these 5 things I want to share that I've learned on my journey that I would love to help other people shortcut their journey. Any observations or thoughts that people just want to throw in the chatbot, in the chat box? I say chatbot so many times a day. Chat box about the chatbot so far, where we're at. Was it what you were expecting to see today? Kerry, feel free to jump in if there's something. People just perplexed. If it's
Emma?
not clear, please.
So I've got a question. So Coach M, that's and excuse my ignorance, that's your product, that's your solution, yes?
Yeah.
Can that be aligned to any learning and development program, or where did the application of it, how do you go about embedding it, utilizing it, if you've got your own IP, or how does that work?
So the whole thing with the turning learning into action methodology that we use with Coach M is that it does go across programs. And so as an organization, we don't deliver any training. We don't have any learning programs. All we have is our process for following up on learning. And so when we partner with other learning providers, or the organization might have us working along with their internal providers and programs to do the behavioral change piece. So Coach M can work alongside any type of learning program. And people are either saying, right, I'll have the basic kind of out the box, or we'll have it more bespoke to what the program is actually about.
Right, that makes sense. And that's fantastic, isn't it, given how few managers, leaders are often so time poor to be able to mentor people or to assist them to embed the learning, if any mentoring or leadership is required. Yes, is that where organisations turn to you as well because they're under-resourced, or is it just to be a more effective way of learning for individuals, more effective transfer of learning for individuals anyway, regardless of any other managerial involvement?
Meg, it can be both. And for different organisations, we work in different ways. So some organisations have a copy of the action plan also goes to the manager. And people will have the conversations with Coach M, but it's a way of priming them for a conversation then with their manager. So when they go into the manager's conversation, they've already started to do some thinking and they've already got some things to report back on.
Okay, that's great.
There's also work that we're doing where people are having conversations with our human team and Coach M. And so it makes it a much more kind of robust process where you have some human interaction and some AI interaction, because the human team really can stretch people and read in between the lines, and Coach M kind of can't do that as yet.
Right.
But yeah, so you can also have the bespoke.
Yes, okay. And are you unique in this market, Emma, or are there other, is it like Box and a Coach? You've got a number of competitors in this field as well, just out of curiosity, or?
Yeah, so Coach in a Box kind of have the human team. They were bought by BTS a few years ago, so they're now within BTS. I don't think they have a chatbot yet.
Okay.
There's one other company in Sweden.
Wow.
Good friends of ours, and we have similar products.
Yep. Okay. Thank you. You've clarified a lot. It's fantastic. It looks great.
Yeah. Thanks, Meg. Michelle, yes. we've started working the discipline with some agencies. Yeah, so I think it depends on what type of chatbot, and we kind of go back to that chatbot screen, Michelle, as to whether is it that they're trying to you're trying to get the chatbot to answer questions, or Michelle, do you want to come off mute, or could you speak to that, or are you not in a position to?
I'm happy to speak and video. I literally started with Disability Services Australia yesterday, so
congratulations! Enjoy.
I haven't got my head around everything yet, and I'm moving all of their learning from paper-based to digital. And one area where we've looked at not only for students with a disability, but for mainstream sector, short courses and different things, is this idea of the chatbot reinforcing, because there was a conference yesterday, National Disability Service, and a speaker spoke specifically about this, and I happened to get an email from the organisation, and I thought, wow, I've got to go to that, it'd be perfect. And it's absolutely thrilling. I'm loving it. So but my area is obviously more not L&D as such, but more in Australian qualification framework courses. And
so I think one of the interesting things, and we've sort of been finding out, is there's so many different ways that chatbots can be used, and so many different ways that we can use Coach M. We've got kind of 7 different use cases that we're now exploring, and some of them are already out there, some aren't. We're doing some work with people who are struggling with mental health challenges.
Yes.
And the results of that first program have been amazing.
Well, that's another area of disability, of course. It's not just in intellectual or cognitive, it's physical and also psychosocial. So I really think I'm keen to learn a lot more. As I said, when I was at uni, Eliza was the one that we learned about when I was studying artificial intelligence before it had capital letters.
Excellent. Thank you, Michelle. So happy to have an offline conversation. But
and I've signed up at your site as well with my details. So
fabulous.
Thank you. Thanks, Emma.
I'm going to take us on. We don't need to see Hugh again. Sorry. I'm really struggling with the basic computer controls here. I'm going to touch us on data. So impact and creating behavioral change, as you can get a sense of, is really important to me now, or has always been important to me. And we can kind of get some data based on the impact and engagement data for how are the conversations within Coach M. So that's very sort of baseline data. We have certain data that we always collect. What's more interesting, and this is where Trish kind of got really excited, is when you think about the amount of data that the chatbot actually creates, there's some real advanced data analytics that you can gain from that. Gillian, I can see you nodding. It sounds as if you were already ahead of me on that curve. I hadn't quite twigged on the significance of the data, but Trish was almost jumping up and down at the excitement of the whole thing. Now, obviously, you need to be respectful. It needs to be confidential, aggregated, anonymized, the whole thing. And it's about communicating very clearly what you're using, what's going where, who's got access to what. But you can get some really interesting insights into what's happening within organizations. And the third piece that we bring in is the intelligence, which is where we have the advanced data analytics. You can also have the chatbot data API'd with an organizational operational data. So you can really then start to see the link, what's happening within the organization with what's been happening within learning. So there's almost so much kind of potential within this. I think we're only just really sort of scratching the surface. I mentioned Trish's work earlier. She has 5 areas analytics that she works on. You can see them here. And there's just so many different types of analysis that we can do using the data coming off the back end. Fascinating. If anyone has got any specific questions on data and measurement, feel free to kind of pop those into the chat box. I want to make sure that I kind of cover off some of the specifics for you. As I mentioned, we have dashboards that kind of track participation and flag when someone's at risk. So we can have both leading indicators and lagging indicators for measurement. We also have, and I've got up on the screen here, where we're looking at alignment. So for example, you might be doing some resilience training within your organization. But are the goals that people are putting in place, do they align with what you're wanting to achieve within your organization? Or are they people doing personal goals that are not going to help you move your organizational goals forward? So those sort of things would be flagged in alignment. Of course, we have the user retention. We have the amount of time that someone spends with Coach M. We find there's a real sweet spot between a 8-week and a kind of a 10-week versus the minute you get to a 12-week, you starting to see some drop off there. But I will, Debbie's former employer absolutely blew everyone away with their commitment over 5 months and 8 learning breaks. We've got some data coming up on that.
And when I first approached you, Emma, about that, it was sort of like, oh, don't know, but we can try, and it absolutely blew everything out of the water.
It did. I think we'd go as far to say as I wasn't keen, Deb.
I would definitely say that, Emma. I wasn't going to dob you in, but
so a lot of the work that we've done with Coach M has really been driven by the vision of the clients. I've got to say, my confidence has come on leaps and bounds now in the last, and Deb, if you think about it, that was I think that was 3 years ago now that we were talking about that.
Yeah, 3, maybe going on 4. Yep.
Yeah, so there's certainly been a lot of changes in that space and time. But that kind of does bring us on to the Coach M journey. So, you know, you're excited with the possibility, your proof of concept is going, but then you kind of get nervous about things, and we've just refined and refined and refined. And I think that really is the way forward with a lot of the new technologies, you know, that the test and measure and just keep improving. A chatbot isn't like I don't know whether and I'm not close enough to e-learning. You know, Connie, you may have a perspective on this, but some of the time we create a program, the program's set, the program's out there and it's off and running, and then it just is off and running and it has a life of its own. The thing with the chatbot is you need to constantly kind of refine and update it. It's not something that you create, kind of put it out there and it doesn't need further updating. For the techie people on the call, I should say that we don't use machine learning within Coach M. We have what I call the human machine learning, which is that any time someone says something that we're not expecting, we get a notification, and we then choose whether we make that change or not based on what's required within that script. So happy to share, we've just got a few minutes left, Bill, I think. I'm not sure who we're going on to next, but I'm going to share very top line some of the things that I've learned from my chatbot journey. The first thing is you've got to know your bot and really understand the bot's personality, but don't give your chatbot too much personality. There's a real sweet spot between being robotic and predictable and the type of tool that no one actually wants to talk to and can't relate to having too much personality. If you have too much personality, people want to just chit chat with Coach M or your whatever type of chatbot you're using, and then it's very difficult for the technology then to actually have that sweet spot and really understand where that conversation is going. And I think what you'll find in most AI at the moment is the most successful ones and the most robust ones are those that really know what they're doing and they do that job well. And so we make it really clear to people what Coach M is for and what the design and remit is. And, you know, that we can't answer who won the AFL championships in the year 2010 or whatever. There's other chatbots that can do that. The second thing that I really learned is stay true to your principles. And that for us, we really believe the central to behavioral change and application of learning is getting people to slow down and reflect and help have this conversation with themselves. So for us, there was no point in putting a tool in place that didn't align with those principles. So really think to yourself, what is it that is true to you in learning when you're moving into a technology space? The third thing we've learned is that it's not about the technology. And occasionally I think people will want a chatbot because they kind of think it's cool and sexy and we want the latest technology. Yes, Meg, me too. But really you've got to think about what are we trying to do with that technology? What is the problem we're trying to solve, and what is it designed for? So for us, it's a conversation about reflection intended to create behavioral change. So always think about the what and the why more than just the technology tool. The fourth thing that, Deb, this is our story, experiment, don't assume. There was Em saying we would never have engagement over 8 learning breaks. And you can see there, just phenomenal. And if in truth, the reason we had the drop off at learning break 8, and you can see there were 2 different cohorts running there, is because learning break 8 was after a final workshop and people felt the program had finished and they'd already graduated. So that's kind of a lesson learned. And also I do think where you can see they're kind of in pairs, and that on the 4th and the 6th, we had a slightly lower uptake from that group 1. There was kind of an instruction that went out that sort of said, as long as you do at least 1 learning break between modules, we're okay with that. And so we got nearly 70% of people opting to do 2. But I mean, I'm sure you all know as learning professionals, so much of it is in the messaging. But despite that, even across, to get that 82 and 86% over that number of learning breaks, nothing short of phenomenal, really. And, you know, hats off to the group of participants that just really embraced it and got into it. And what we can tell through our learning and not making the assumptions is you can then start to create the patterns. So we had some learning breaks go out this morning to one of our clients who's just won the Nobel Prize. I'm so proud of them for that. Not that it is absolutely anything to do with us at all, one iota, although we have been working with their leaders over the last, we did a program sort of 2 years ago with our human team, and they're now using Coach M to help them in their leadership development. Some learning breaks went out today. This morning, I'm checking the stats. We had 31% of people do their learning breaks on the day that it's issued. I can almost predict now that well, it was 31 this morning. It's typically around 33% of people will do their learning breaks on the day that it goes out. So you sort of build up your stats and your data as you go through. So while you're experimenting, you can really start to then get the data on the types of behavioral change and uplifts that people have. You can see here some retail hardware stores against pharmaceutical group. And as you experiment, you just get more and more information as to how people are using it, what it's meant for them, what are some of the outcomes. And you can see here some of the things that people were sharing, verbatims from different clients. So the final, number 5, my 5th lesson learned is be really, really clear on expectations. So one of the things that we say up front with our chatbot is I'm clever, but I'm not that clever. And, you know, we can be humorous about setting the expectations of what's possible and what's not possible. I was working with, I was kind of in sales process with a bank in New Zealand a few years ago now. And the guy was asking me lots of questions. And I said, look, I've got to be clear with you. This is not Watson, which is the IBM chatbot, which is being used around the world. And the client came back to me and he said, it doesn't have the Watson price tag. And little bit known to me, he had been in discussion with IBM about getting Watson. Now they actually decided to go for Coach M within learning in their really specific niche of helping it with behavioral change part of training. But you've really got to set that expectation as to what can your chatbot do and what can't it do. Now, the final lesson learned, haven't numbered it because it's a bonus, but you've got to be super clear about your data governance. that means your accountability for your data, your liability and your compliance, your security, your privacy and reliability, and your ethics and your philosophy and practice around AI. And I think this is going to become even more important. And I think as learning professionals, we just need to almost really take responsibility and get quite serious about what's happening with the data that we use within learning. And in a way, you know, it's not just your evaluation data, it's things like someone's email address, someone's phone number, all of those kind of things. We're heading into the phase where we're going to be having questions. I just wanted to sort of, you know, I've been sharing a lot today about Coach M. I wanted to share the story. I wanted to share some of our learnings. And I'm also happy to support people if they want to go on their own journey with chatbots. And basically there's sort of 3 different ways that you can work with a chatbot. You can certainly do it yourself. You know, there's different chatbot authoring tools out there. You can have a go at creating something from scratch. You can also choose to partner and work with a partner that will help guide you and do that with you. And then you can buy a solution that's out of the box, or kind of a bespoke customization where people will do it for you. And we kind of fall more into the do it for you category from the expertise that we've created over, say, just over 4 years now, or coming up for 4 years. But I really encourage people to experiment and just see what feels, you know, could be right for you, could be right for your clients. My technology partner is a company called Mobile Coach out of the US. They are amazing, really, really fantastic to work for and to work with. And if anyone would like an introduction to them, you know, again, please just say. What I feel as if we've kind of done a bit of a share. There's been some good learnings and inputs from the group there. Are the questions that are unanswered, or things that we feel we need to revisit from the conversation?
I think everybody's absorbing all of that.
Oh. It's a lot to take in. Sorry if there was slightly, you know, the classic too much content possibly.
No, Emma, I think we're just sort of probably a little bit sort of in awe. I mean, have to say congratulations for sort of creating such a fantastic initiative. So I love anything that's going to support learners and help us make more of an impact for organisations and our learners. So this certainly has come a long way. And as you know, I've done a lot of work with Jeff Ripp, but this is actually such a useful tool. And I was also interested on how people feel more safe using this than a real live person to help them apply the learning. And you know, and showing those stats that you did before about how they're embracing it over a long period of time, because normally you'd expect, well, what I was expecting was a drop off, or people feel better with a person. That this is, you know, surprisingly proving that all wrong. So you know, it's a real eye opener for me.
Emma,
yeah. Sorry, just to say, Kerry, I think one of the things is, for me, there's been a big lesson in just kind of getting over my own prejudices. Yes. Of what's possible with technology or not. And, you know, yes, you know, there's clients and I'm now educating and evangelizing for this, but I really had to get out of my own way to even be able to go on this journey and to sort of start this information, to, you know, start the ball rolling and to stretching it. And, you know, it's people like Deb and, you know, other clients that we've worked with that have really kind of helped on that journey as well. So that's one of the things I love about working with people in learning, is such collaboration and generosity of support and stretch. Meg, were you going to jump in with a question?
I was just very curious. Do you find more any particular industry segments that are more enthused to use this sort of technologies to help transfer of learning versus, I'm sure there's many that are still risk averse and don't want to do this. So what are sort of some of the industry segments you find yourselves working with?
I think it's funny. It's hard to say, but I kind of think you often have an industry where, for example, you know, if you do work in pharma, then everyone in pharma suddenly becomes interested. And I don't think it's necessarily because of the people that are in pharma. You just kind of look over your own garden fence and say, I want what they've got. So it's really, so the big thing for me is people are people. And this is about, it's about people. It's not really about the content. It's not about the application. I think some sectors are maybe farther along in the automation and the IT thinking piece, which maybe your banking and your finance sector perhaps. But you know, some of the, we're working with 2 not-for-profits at the moment, and they're really embracing it. So kind of part of me goes, well, actually, if the not-for-profits are getting on board with it, then, you know, yeah. So that doesn't really answer your question, Meg, but
No,
I'm
I'm
sort
just
of
curious. No, thank you.
not sort of seeing those trends now. Oh, Bill, sorry, beg your pardon. Bill, someone else is going to need, sorry, Kerry, could you stop my screen sharing? I'm having real problems with my mouse.
All right, well, let me, there we go.
Thanks, Kerry.
Yeah, this is just a nice way of being able to have a conversation.
Yeah, of course.
So, with
No, I appreciate
filling
that.
everybody's screen in. So that's
Yeah.
been terrific. So are there any other comments or questions for Emma at this stage?
Emma, is it a 20 to 30 minute learning break? Is that what I read and is that what I saw? Is it now, okay, we know people struggle with a 3-minute video. So how do we convince, how do we justify, how do we, I don't know what the word is, but how do we manage to get over that barrier to make people and ensure they're engaged for that 20 or 30 minutes?
Do you know what the...
Sorry, Emma, I have a response to that. I think it feels like you're having a chat with a friend. So you're not actually, you don't feel as if you're learning, you don't feel as if it's a chore, you feel maybe a little bit sneaky that you're having a little bit of extra time on your coffee break, but you're chatting with a friend. And that's the difference. That's where the you know, behavior change starts to sink in, because your friend's advising you constantly. So I don't think, I haven't heard of with my past role, and I mean, Emma and I are deep in conversation at the moment with where I am. I don't think it's going to be an issue at all.
And Con, when we first started it, I thought people would spend 10 minutes. I thought we'd be getting tick and flick and just real short answers, as short as they can. And so there's quite a few places within the learning break, you have the option whether you want to stop or whether you want to continue, and people want to continue. So yeah, and someone could go through it probably around 10-15 minutes if they wanted to, but people are being more thoughtful and really spending time answering the questions. So it's kind of being learner driven rather than saying you will spend 20 to 30 minutes on that time.
So if I say to the chatbot, that's it, I've had enough for today, bye, the chatbot will leave me alone.
So if you say stop, the chatbot will leave you alone. It won't necessarily know if you say, that's it, thanks so much, I'm done today. But what we've actually done is we've given people the instruction that if you want to stop chatting with the chatbot, just don't reply. If you don't reply, the chatbot won't reply to you. They might send you a message in an hour's time to say, oh, have you got time to finish where you left off? And if you haven't heard from them in 48 hours, you might get another message. But if you want to stop chatting with the chatbot, just stop replying.
Okay, that's good.
As simple as that.
Oh, thanks.
And Deb, you've had some real experience in this area with chatbots and with what Emma's doing. Do you have stories that you'd like to share with us at this stage?
Well, the story that I always love to hear, and I don't know whether Emma said it while I had to step away with my granddaughter, but there's a story about one of the participants in one of the groups that actually they got they sent Coach Emma a Christmas message saying, you know, Merry Christmas and hope you enjoy the day. And I just think that speaks volumes for, you know, for the connection that these people have with Coach M, because, you know, that's quite personal. And I think, you know, I mean, Emma can tell the story much better than me, but, you know, Emma was at that stage, it was quite early on, and Emma was actually reviewing and going, oh goodness, what am I supposed to do with this? You know, because it's unexpected. And I think that's the surprise in all of this. You know, yes, we're talking about it from a learning and development perspective, and we want the transfer of learning, we want the behaviour change, we want the application of everything that we've instilled in them. However, it's that personal connection that actually makes the difference. And with being transparent with it upfront, they know that they're talking to artificial intelligence, but they still think that it's, you know, as I said, Con, they think they're talking to their friend, you know, and if you don't want to respond to what your friend said in the last message, well, you don't respond, do you? You know, they'll get back to you. They'll still like you when we connect next time. And I think it's that connection piece that really is the gold that sits behind it. And that's, you know, nothing that's been, you know, designed as such, but I think there is some design in that. You know, you could have these conversations with artificial intelligence, you know, and I mean, Australia Post would be a good example, just pulling that out, but you know, there's not that connection being made, and deliberately not being made, whereas this is this very, very connective piece. It's made a huge difference. I can speak for my last role, where I did all of the pre-work and set Emma up and introduced her into the program, and it did enormous got enormous results in that field. And as I said, I'm deep in conversation with her at the moment to introduce her into my current business and hopefully get down to a lower level. In my last role, it was with managers. This time I want to take it down to the coalface and actually get to the heart and soul of the business and the customer service people. So we'll see how we go.
And it's funny.
Sorry, I was just going to say, is that how are you applying it? Are you talking about in a customer service or in an HR kind of environment?
It's what I'm designing at the moment is a customer experience program. It's a 12-week structured program, and I want to use the chatbot through that 12 weeks in order to give them some learning breaks, number one, so that the reflection time is there and the application time is there, but also we can get greater uptake of the behavior changes that we want to see by utilizing a tool like Coach M. So that's the plan. You know, there's a lot of talking to go yet, not with Emma. Emma and I, we're on the same page, but it's talking to the board and getting, you know, approval for money and funding and all of that sort of thing, which will be the harder work. You know, this connection with Emma, and I'm doing this because you're right next to me on the screen here, Emma. This connection is already set and ready to go, and we could start tomorrow. It's just convincing of everybody else is more of the challenge. However, with the work that Emma's done, particularly with my connection in that past role that I had, we've got really good solid case studies to you know, present the data. The data is significant, you know, it talks, you know, people talk numbers in business, and you know, our world's living qualitative data, but they want to hear quantitative stuff. And when you can go back to them and say, look, there was an 80% increase, you know, people achieving their goals, they'd be nuts not to say yes.
Yeah. No, I can't wait to find out more. And thank you for the website and the LinkedIn stalking. I don't know about the rest of the participants, but I found it really interesting. Emma and Debbie, thank you very much
Thanks,
for your
Michelle.
response as well.
Thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Deb, and thanks, Em, for what I found was a fascinating masterclass once again. So thank you, everyone. Let's give a big round of applause.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
That's great. Now, Carrie, before I go ahead and tell people a little bit about what we're going to be doing for the next masterclass, you have some exciting news which you'd like to share with us.
I do, and I'll probably be talking about it for the next few months. Probably about the last 25 years since I've been in the industry, I have a corporate learning and development background. So there's always been an issue in that field that the certificate for and training and assessment has been the default industry standard or benchmark introduction into learning and development. So over the last few years, we've been developing and doing a lot of research behind the scenes about what capabilities L&D professionals need now and in the future. And through that, as well as we've come up with our capability framework, we've also just been approved last week from ASQA for a new Cert 4 qualification for trainers and developers that deliver non-accredited training, so
Right.
the corporate world. So still a bit of development to be done behind the scenes, but early in 2021, we'll be launching the Certificate 4 in Learning Design and Facilitation. So
That's excellent.
very
Congratulations.
so it's just filling a big niche that's been missing for a long, long time.
Certainly is. Well done.
Thank you. Very excited. So
There's a great conversation happening on LinkedIn on that at the moment. So I refer to Bill and you.
oh, is there?
Yeah, there was a great conversation where
I've only been telling our sort of members lounge and
I'm telling them that there's a really good framework and a really good Cert 4 they need to look at. That's what I'm telling them.
Oh, thanks, Con.
Well, that's good. And the other thing we have going along with the capability framework is at the end of November 24, 25, and 26, we've got a L&D capability development event. So what we're looking to do is basically go through the 18 capabilities that ILP has identified and show people what it's about, and bringing a lot of our members in to create the material for that. So we'll have about 20 mentors involved in taking people through the process of doing all of that. So lots of stuff going on there as well. So you'll hear more about that in our email next week.
Okay.
So that's great. And lastly, then, I'd like to just talk for a couple of minutes about our next masterclass in 2 weeks from now. And it's going to be, I think, a really special one. And it was an idea I had last week, and I put a call out to people about it. And what it was is I was thinking, this has been an incredible year, challenges, opportunities, etc. So I put a call out to about 18 of our members that I've been working with over the last year. And I said to them, would you be willing to share your story of 2020 with us? Because we know that some people have pivoted and adapted very well. Others have changed entirely. Some of them have had personal impacts. Others have had professional impacts. And what I want to do is put 6 stories together. So I had 18 people. Within an hour, I had more than a dozen people put their hands up to do it. So it's my pleasure to be able to go through and eliminate whoever has to be eliminated from the system. But of course, we'll still find a way to make them involved. But what we're going to be doing is running the session. Basically, Carrie and I will simply quickly introduce it. Then each of the speakers will basically give us a 10-minute story, and it really is a story kind of thing. It's about what was happening before, what was the impact, and then from there, what did they do and what did they learn. And again, we're going to get a whole range of different perspectives on that, and then we'll throw it open to an open forum for the remainder 25 or 30 minutes for people to ask questions, share their own stories and things like that. So if you can come along, please do. I think it's going to be a great session, a real reflection upon what we're doing. And it's our penultimate masterclass. We have one more after that, and then the final 2 events for the years are based around the Learning Impact Awards. So we have the finalists being announced, and then the award winners in the final session for the month or for the year. So please join us. Share on LinkedIn and other places when you see any of the notices about it, and let's have as many people along as we possibly can. So thank you.
Thanks for having me. My first seminar with you, and really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Fantastic, Michelle. Nice to have you with us.
Thank you.
And again, remember, all of these are recorded, and they're all up on the website. So we have 15 or so masterclasses now up under the resources page on the ILP website, along with a range of other things, of course. So go and explore that as well.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And Carrie, over to you to finish us up.
All right, well, you've covered everything. So all I've got to say is thank you so much to everybody for joining us. Emma, thank you for sharing us your fantastic initiative. And Deb, also your story as well, and introducing Emma. So thank you, everyone. Hopefully we'll see you either Friday at the Member Lounge or next masterclass. So stay safe, take care. Thanks again.
Thanks, Carrie.
Bye for
Thanks,
now.
Emma. Thanks, Dave.
Very best wishes, everyone.
Bye,
Best
Hey, guys.
I'm trying to stop the recording.